I remember when Google unveiled the .zip domains, possibly one of the worst ideas they have ever conceived. Totally not ripe for abuse at every single opportunity. So would you be surprised if I told you it's being abused at every single opportunity? So this is a write-up by Fortinet, a fairly large cybersecurity firm out of California. Threat trends. Threat actors add .zip domains to their phishing arsenals. The main issue we have here is we now have domains that look awfully familiar to a really common file type, that being a zip archive. Now you could just say, learn how computers work, and that's totally reasonable. Now you and I are probably going to examine any of the slightly suspicious links that someone sends us, but there's a lot of people out there who just don't. If it comes from an account they recognize, or even an account they don't recognize, they just click on the link and then see what happens afterwards. So much so that Google just didn't consider the information useful, and on multiple occasions has tried to hide parts of the URL. Now luckily, that never fully happened. .zip domains, however, they did. Now, before we get to the really malicious stuff, there are some people out there acting as good Samaritans, sort of trying to warn people about the dangers of these links. One really great example is chatgpt5.zip. This is registered on Namecheap, and the site operates outside of the United States. This right here is the entire site. OpenAI announces early access to ChatGPT-5 and includes a download link. Now, I can imagine this exact same concept being shared around for free Discord Nitro, or free Reddit Gold, or free Twitter Blue, or anything else like that. But in this case, this one isn't malicious. All it contains is a single zip archive that contains a single text file. You got pwned by a most elite hacksaw, with Love and Robots, Sam Altman, and the OpenAI team that definitely works from the office. Another similar example being assignment.zip. This right here is the entire website, and this is registered on Porkbun, also operating outside of the United States. This is obviously a very generic one, but I can imagine someone making a site like this for any of the popular colleges or popular universities, and then trying to target students at that institution, whether it's made by a student there themselves or some outside party trying to get login credentials. And various other domains which could have been used for malicious purposes got purchased early and are now just pointing to a rickroll. Now, with those last two domains, you may have noticed something about domain registrars. Now, obviously, Google is going to be selling .zip domains, but they are not the only ones. Even though this is a really, really bad idea and should not exist, all of the main domain registrars are selling .zip domains. Namecheap, Porkbun, and a bunch of others are all selling it. But Google's page by far is the funniest. This one says, this ending, .zip, has been popular recently. I wonder why. Could it be all the people doing malicious things with it? Imagine that. Now, other domains are being used a little bit more maliciously. One example being 42.zip, registered on May 15th. This, when you go to the page, automatically starts a download of a zip archive. This archive should not be opened. The archive itself is the attack. This zip is a zip bomb. You may have heard of a fork bomb, where you have a process that keeps forking into more and more and more child processes until the system basically just locks up. A zip bomb is a similar concept for your storage space. So this zip file is a relatively small file, but as you start to unpack it, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and very quickly can get into petabytes of data. Nowadays, most antivirus software and most zip tools can see what's happening relatively quickly and will try to put a stop to it, but if you don't have any protections in place, it can very quickly become a problem. Now, whether this is actually supposed to be a malicious site or not is sort of debatable, because 42.zip is also the name of the common example file, so maybe this is just trying to be a site that hosts the example and not trying to be malicious, but considering that it just downloads the file without telling you, it seems to be more on the malicious side. Now, a more clear-cut example is excelpatch.zip and Outlook 365 update.zip. These send you to a fake Google login page. Now, it would make more sense if it was a Microsoft login page, but once again, this is trying to target people who may not be the most computer literate, who just do whatever the computer tells them to do. If it tells you to log into your Google account, there is going to be people that just log into their Google account. Also, for many, a Google account would be something a lot more at the ready. Even if you're a Windows user, when was the last time you needed to log into a Microsoft account? Probably when you installed the system, and unless you're an Outlook user? Probably never. You probably have a Gmail, you probably have a YouTube, and you probably have to log into your Google account on a far more frequent basis. YouTube, the next part is for educational purposes only. Do not strike this video. Where this gets really bad is when you combine it with just how broken the web is. Have you ever thought about the different components of a URL? We have the scheme, the authority, the path, and the query. The one part that we care about, though, is the authority. This is where your domain name lives. Now, typically, that is all that is there, but it can be split into two further sections: authentication at domain, with the authentication section being username, password, and then at whatever domain you're trying to go to. This is for a system known as HTTP Basic Auth, which is one of the ways you can send credentials to a server. Now, many websites do not use this, they've migrated over to other systems, but it is still perfectly a part of the HTTP spec, and there are some services out there which do use it. It might seem like a really dumb idea. Why would you want your username and password in the URL? But assuming your SSL is set up correctly, it's mostly fine. The problem is what a browser does to this URL. So here's an example where I'm sending username and password to my website, brodyrobertson.xyz. Now down the bottom here, it's only showing brodyrobertson.xyz. It is not including the authentication. If I click on this, it takes me to my website. Now this behavior is the intended behavior, and this is the way it would normally be used. But let's mess around with it. What if instead the link is this? www.microsoft.com/download/@brodyrobertson.xyz. Now imagine this is something like excelupdate.zip or officeupdate.zip or windows12.zip or something like that. Now if we click on this link, it's going to do what you expect. Send us to an error page on the Microsoft website. But what if we combine this with an IDN homograph attack? What if instead of using the regular slashes you would type on your keyboard, instead we use a slightly different kind of slash, and now the link is going to go directly to my website. This isn't some weird trickery where my href is different from the text you're seeing here. It is exactly the same link. www.microsoft.com/download/@brodyrobertson.xyz. But because of these slightly different slashes, which if you know what you're looking for, you can spot, they are a slightly different angle and they're slightly merging into the previous character with the M and the S here, but because they're not the regular URL slashes, they don't act the same way. These are just being treated like any other character you would write in a URL. So to the browser, all of this stuff here is being treated as the authentication and not being treated as a domain name. This is a really sneaky attack because to someone who's not very tech literate, they see Microsoft.com. Okay, that means it's safe. Google.com, Discord.com, so on and so forth, but they don't realize what's actually being run is the thing over here. Now, thankfully, Firefox is a little bit more sane than Chromium. Clicking on the link will give us a pop-up. You're about to log into the site, brodyrobertson.xyz. This may be an attempt to trick you. Thank you, Firefox. Why Chromium doesn't do this? I don't know. It's such a simple thing. But just this little thing will deter so many people. Now, a lot of people are still going to click yes, but it'll be far less. Also, very rare Discord W, if you try to send a link like this, it is going to shorten it down to just after the authentication. So you can't easily spread a Discord Nitro link like this, but you could send someone to a website or link them from a YouTube video or a subreddit or something like that. As you can see, it's working with XYZ. This is not unique to .zip. But if you see something like /download/ some zip file name, it's gonna seem like you're trying to download a file. Most people aren't going to assume this is sending you to another website. My example was just an example, but the example that Fortinet used was businesscentral.zip. This is a real domain that if you go to, automatically downloads a .exe file, and another one being releaseapp.zip. This will download a zip archive, which, as you would expect, is a malicious archive, so it's very possible that this attack is already being used in the real world. There is also a slightly less malicious problem, but a problem nonetheless. Do you know what happens when you have a new popular top-level domain? All of a sudden, there is free real estate for domain squatting. So very quickly, Joomla.zip, MSNBC.zip, and NozomiNetworks.zip all got registered. Now, due to some sensible law in the US back in 1999, the Anti-Cyber Squatting Consumer Protection Act, if you own a trademark to a name and someone else squats in your domain, you can get that domain handed over to you. And in this case, many of these domains have been handed over. But this only matters for trademark names. And for things like calories.zip, well, there's nothing stopping you trying to sell it for $80,000. But look, if someone is going to charge you $80,000, just come up with a different name. It's probably not worth it. Just to never deal with the problem of .zip domains, the authors do recommend some mitigation strategies. Block .zip domains at the firewall level with web filtering services. To the best of my knowledge, there are no legitimate .zip domains out there. The only ones that exist are warning you that .zip domains are bad. Maybe there is one, in which case that one can be whitelisted, but as a general default, you should not be allowing them. Secondly, leverage browser extensions and web filters. There are a lot of extensions out there that include a database of dangerous websites and allow users to report different sites to make sure that other users are kept safe. Education and awareness. If there's anybody in your life that's a little bit less tech literate, make sure they are fully aware of this problem, and if anything seems a little bit off, get them to contact you. Email filtering. Every business out there should be scanning the emails that come in, trying to make sure the obviously malicious ones never make their way to the user. Regular software updates. If you're running Windows 7, if you're running an ancient version of your web browser, stop doing that right now. There is no reason to be doing so. I don't care what your excuse is. If you are connecting to the internet, that is a stupid idea, and if there's anybody in your life that is doing that, make sure to help them and bring them up to the modern age where they are getting security patches. And once again for those businesses, phishing simulation and training. If there's some way you can train your employees on these situations, maybe intentionally sending them fake phishing emails just to see the response you get. As much as I would like it to, .zip is not going away, and we're just gonna have to deal with it. Just be careful. If you see a .zip link, I would highly recommend you just don't click it unless you are fully aware it is safe. Like you host it, your friend hosts it, or for some other reason, you know it's not gonna be malicious. And if in a URL you see @somename.zip, just avoid clicking it, because it's probably not worth it. So, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Have you run into any problems with .zip? Do you know anyone in your life that's run into one of these malicious websites? Or have you run into one yourself? I would love to know. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. And if you like the video, go like the video. And if you really like the video and you want to become one of these amazing people over here, check out Patreon, subscribe to Liberapay, linked in the description down below. That's going to be it for me, and zip.